Hello friend, welcome to the Life Study channel. Today I am going to discuss Apache Kafka interview question and answer for fresher and experienced both, but mostly experienced person can watch this video. So let's start. First question is, what are some of the feature of Kafka? So basically, the Kafka is their top 10 Apache Kafka features, means durability, performance, zero downtime, extensibility, replications, scalability, high volume, fault tolerance, reliability, data transmission. So in this Kafka is a messaging system built of high output and fault tolerance. Kafka has a built-in partition system known as a topics to Kafka, including the replication feature as well. Kafka provides a queue that can handle large amount of data and move messages from one sender to another. Kafka can also save the message to store and replicate them across the cluster. For coordination and synchronization with other services, Kafka collaborates with the Zookeeper. Apache Spark is always supported by the Kafka also. Next question is, what are the major components of Kafka? So the Kafka architecture means the cluster. There are three means: the producer, broker, and consumer. Producer, broker, and consumer. So there are multiple push messages, pull messages, right? So in the topics wise can like produce means the topics means there are total whole topics. So means producer, there are some category means producer category, topics, consumer means you can also call the broker. So means the topics is category fit with the record and save and publish. The topics are used to organize all of the Kafka records. Consumer app read data from topics, whereas a producer application write data to them. Record publish to the cluster, remain in the cluster of the during of configurable retention period. Kafka keep record in log, and it is up to the consumer to keep track of where they are in the log. The offset as the message are read, a consumer typically advance the offset in a linear fashion. The consumer, on the other hand, in the charge of the position, as he or she can consume message in any order. When reprocessing a recording, for example, consumer can reset to the older offset. In a producer, a Kafka producer is a data source for one or more Kafka topics that optimize, write, and publish messages. Partitioning allow Kafka produce to serialize, compress, and load balance data among the brokers. Consumers. Consumer means the data is read by the consumer by reading messages from topics to which they have subscribed. Consumer will be divided into groups. Each consumer in a consumer group will be responsible for reading a subset of the partition of each subject to which they have subscribed. But in a brokerage, the Kafka broker is a server that works as a part of Kafka cluster. In the other word, Kafka cluster is made up of a number of brokers. So multiple brokers typically work together to build a Kafka cluster which provides load balancing, realizable redundancy, and failover. The cluster is managed and coordinated by the broker using Apache Zookeeper. Without sacrificing performance, each broker instance can handle read and write volume of the hundred of the thousand per second and gigabyte of the message. Each broker has its own ID and can be in charge of one or more topics long division. Zookeeper is also used by the Kafka broker for loader election, in which a broker is chosen to lead the handling of client request for a certain partition of a topic. Connecting to any broker will bringing a cluster up to speed with the entire Kafka cluster. A minimum of 3 brokers should be used to achieve realizable failover. The higher number of brokers, the more realizable failover. Right? Another question is explain the 4 core API architecture that Kafka uses. So there are 4 cluster, means the connector, producer, stream processor, and consumers. Right? So I am discuss one by one. Producer API is a Kafka allow an application to publish a stream of record to one or more Kafka topics. Another one is a consumer API. An application can subscribe to one or more Kafka topics using the Kafka consumer API. It also enables the application to process a stream of records generated in a relation to such topics. Stream API means the Kafka Stream API allow an application to use a stream processing architecture to process data in Kafka. An application can use this API to take input stream from one or more topics, process them using a stream operation, and generate output stream to transmit to the one or more topics. The Stream API allows you to convert into input stream into output stream in this manner. Connect API, the Kafka connector API connect Kafka topics to application. This opens up possibility for connecting and managing the operation of producer and consumer, as well as stabilizing producer reusable link between the this solution. A connector, for example, may capture all database updates and ensure that they are made available in Kafka topics. Another question is, what method does Apache Kafka use to connect with the client and server? The Apache Kafka uses a basic high-performance language agnostic TCP protocol to facilitate communication between client and server. Backward capability exists between this protocol. It is a predecessor. Move to the another question. Another question is, what is the Kafka mirror maker? The Kafka mirror maker is a stand-alone tool that allow data to be copied from one Apache Kafka cluster another. The Kafka mirror maker will read data from topics in the original cluster and write the topic to a destination cluster with the same topic's name. The source and destination cluster are independent entities and can have different number of partitions and varying offset value. Another question is, what is the confluent replicator? The confluent replicator allow easy and reliable replication of topics from source cluster to a destination cluster. It continuously copies messages from the source to the destination and even assign the same name to the topic in the destination cluster. Another question is how can load balancing be ensured in Apache Kafka when one Kafka failed? When a Kafka server failed, if it was the leader for any partition, one of its follower will take the role of beginning the new leaders to ensure load balancing. For this to happen, the topic replication factor has to be more than one. Either the leader should have at least one of followers to take one on the new role of the leader. Another question is how can large messages be sent in Apache Kafka? By default, the largest size of message that can be sent in Apache Kafka is 1 MB. In order to send larger message using Kafka, a few partitions have to be adjusted. Here are the configuration details that have been updated. At least consumer int fetch.message.max.byte. At the broker int to create replicator.fetch.max.byte. At the broker end of the creating the message means message.max.byte. At the broker end of the message topics means the max.message.byte. Another question is explain message compression in Apache Kafka. In Apache Kafka, producer application write data into brokers in JSON format. The data in the JSON format is stored in a string form, which can result in several replicated records getting stored in the Kafka topics. This leads to increased occupation of disk space. Hence, to reduce this disk space, compression of message or lingering the data in performed before sending the message to the Kafka. The message compression is done on the producer side, and hence there is no need to make any change to the configuration of the consumer or the broker. Another question is what is need of message compression in Apache Kafka? The message compression in Apache Kafka not require any change in the configuration of the broker or the consumer. It is beneficial for the following reason. Means due to reduced size, it is reduced the latency in which messages are sent to Kafka. Reduced bandwidth allows the producer to send more net message to the broker. When the data is stored in Kafka View Cloud platform, it can reduce the cost in the case where the cloud service are paid. The message compression lead to reduced disk load, which will lead to faster read and write request. Another question is explain producer batch in the Apache Kafka. Producer write message to the Kafka one at a time. Kafka wait for message that are being sent to Kafka, create a batch and put the message into the batch and wait until this batch become full. Only then it is the batch sent to Kafka. The batch here is known as the producer batch. The default size of producer batch is 16 KB, but it can be modified. The larger the batch size, the more it is the compression and the throughput of the producer request. Another question is maintain some huge case where Apache Kafka is not suitable. Apache Kafka is built to handle high volume of data. If the requirement is process only a small number of messages per day, a traditional messaging system would be more suitable. Kafka has a streaming API, but it is not suitable for performing data transformation in operation. Kafka is to be avoided for ETL, means exact transforms loader job. In case where a simple task a query is needed, there are better alternatives like the RabbitMQ. Actually, I have already make a video. I have already uploaded a RabbitMQ interview question answer, so you can watch in this video. Apache is not a good if long-term store is required. It is support saving data only for a specific returns per period and not longer than that. Another question is define consumer lag in Apache Kafka. Consumer lag refers to the lag between the Kafka producer and consumer. Consumer group will have a lag if the data production rate for exceed the rate at the which the data is getting consumed. Consumer lag is the difference between at least offset and the consumer offset. Latest and consumer. What do you know about log compaction in Kafka? Log compaction is a method by which Apache Kafka ensure that at least the last no value each message key with the log of data is retained for a single topic partition. This makes it possible to restore the state after an application crash or in the event of a system failure. It allows cache reloading once an application restarts during any operational maintenance. Log compaction ensures that any consumer processing the log from start can view the final state of all records in the original order they were written. Another question is what is maintained by cluster ID in Kafka? Kafka clusters are assigned unique and immutable identifier. The identifier for a particular cluster is known as the cluster ID. A cluster ID can have a maximum of 22 characters and have to following the regular expression, means A to Z, A to this one, to 9, hash, slash, plus this one. It is generated when a broker with the version of 0.10.1 or latest is successfully started from the first time. The broker attempts to get the cluster ID from the J node during startup. If the J node does not exist, the broker generates a new cluster ID and creates the J node with this cluster ID. Another question is why is the Apache Kafka broker said to be dump? The Apache Kafka broker does not keep a tab of which two consumers have read message. It simply keeps all of the message in its queue for a fixed time, known as the return time, after which the messages are deleted. It is the responsibility of the consumer to put the message from the queue. Hence, the Kafka is said to have a small client dump broker architecture. When does Kafka throw a buffer exception? Apache, the buffer exhausted exception is thrown when the producer can't allocate memory to a record due to the buffer being too full. The exception is thrown if the producer is in non-blocking mode and the rate of data production exceeds the rate at which data is sent from the buffer for long enough for the allocated buffer to be accepted. Another question is what are the responses? What are the responsibility of a controller broker in Kafka? The main role of the controller is to manage and coordinate the Kafka cluster along with the Apache zookeeper. Any broker in the cluster can take the role of the controller. However, once the application starts running, there can be only one controller broker in the cluster. When the broker starts, it will try to create a controller node in zookeeper. The first broker that creates this controller node becomes a controller. The controller is responsible for create and delete topics, adding partition and assigning leader to the partition, managing the broker in a cluster, adding new broker, active broker, shutdown and broker failure, leader election, reallocation of partition. Another question is, what case out of memory exception? Out of memory exception can occur if the consumer are sending large message or if there is a spike in the number of messages when in the consumer is sending message at the rate of faster than the rate of downstream processing. This case the message queue to fill up taking up memory. Another question is, what role does the Kafka consume API and Kafka produce API play? A consumer API enables an application to subscribe to one or more topics and process the stream of records provided to them. You can see Kafka produce API play the role of a wrapper for the two producers, synchronized producer and asynchronous producer. The goal is to give the client access to every producer capability using a single API.